At the family photo shoot my sister organized, they gave everyone cool props except me. Mine was a sign that said family disappointment. I didn't make a scene. Just went to my car, retrieved an old shoebox, and slid it across the table. When they opened it and saw those faded letters from the universities they'd claimed rejected me, they fell silent. The sound of my sister Olivia's laughter cut through the backyard as I pulled into the driveway. It was that performative laugh she'd perfected in high school, loud enough to draw attention, musical enough to seem genuine. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, counting slowly backward from 10. This was just another Sunday. 4 hours, maximum. I could do this. It had started 3 weeks ago with a group text, annual Reynolds family photo time. Professional photographer. Mom and Dad's backyard. Sunday at 2. No excuses. And then, just for me, a separate text, Ethan, please try to be on time for once. I just closed my third major acquisition of the year, a struggling tech startup with revolutionary IP that my investment firm had been eyeing for months. The closing documents were signed at 1:37 p.m., pushing my personal net worth well past the 8-figure mark. I'd allowed myself exactly 5 minutes to savor the victory before changing into the family-appropriate button-down I kept in my office for these occasions. Still, I was 17 minutes late to the Reynolds family spectacular. Mom hurried over as I stepped through the side gate, air kissing my cheek. "You're late, honey. Everyone's already picked their props." Props? I glanced around the meticulously landscaped backyard. My father was positioned near the large oak tree, wearing a ridiculous plastic crown and holding a trophy labeled World's Greatest Dad. Josh, my older brother, was adjusting a captain's hat while clutching a ship's wheel and a whistle, subtle, really subtle. Mom herself had a tiara and what appeared to be a bejeweled wooden spoon with Family Chef Extraordinaire painted on it. Olivia's idea, Mom explained, pulling me toward the patio table where various objects were arranged like artifacts at a yard sale. The photographer loves it. She says it adds personality. I scanned the table. A stethoscope for my cousin Melissa, third-year medical resident, as she mentioned roughly every 7 minutes. A tennis racket for Uncle Steve. A graduation cap for my niece Harper, who just finished high school. And then, propped against a picture of what appeared to be Mom's famous sangria, a cardboard sign. Family disappointment. The words were written in glittery gold paint, with little star stickers scattered around the border. As if decorating the message somehow softened it. "Is this a joke?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Josh appeared at my shoulder, clapping me hard enough to make me stumble. "Don't be so sensitive, bro. Everyone knows their role, right?" He grinned at me, exactly the same grin he'd had when he told my high school girlfriend I was cheating on her. I wasn't, but she believed him because everyone always believed Josh. Mom's eyes darted nervously between us. "Olivia thought it would be funny, dear. You know how she gets these creative ideas." Yes, I knew how Olivia got. Oldest daughter, middle child, perpetually seeking validation through elaborate plans that everyone else was required to appreciate. Her creative ideas typically involve some form of public humiliation for me, carefully disguised as good fun. "It's just for the photos, Ethan," Dad called over, adjusting his crown. "Nobody takes it seriously." Except they did. That was the thing about my family. The jokes were never just jokes. They were carefully crafted reminders of the hierarchy, of my permanent place at the bottom. I was the youngest of 3, the surprise that came 6 years after they thought they were done having children. The mistake they'd adjusted to, the afterthought they'd accommodated. By the time I came along, the family mythology was already firmly established. Josh was the brilliant one, destined for greatness. Olivia was the passionate one, whose artistic temperament required special handling. And I was. Well, I was the one who needed to try harder. When Josh failed sophomore English, it was because the teacher had it out for him. When I got a B+ in calculus, it was because I wasn't applying myself. When Olivia dropped out of 3 colleges in 5 years, she was finding herself. When I chose business instead of law school, I was settling. "Earth to Ethan," Olivia snapped her fingers in front of my face. "Are you having one of your moods? We've been planning this for weeks." I looked at her, really looked at her. My sister at 37, with her carefully highlighted hair and her designer sundress that I was almost certain still had the tags tucked in so she could return it tomorrow. Olivia, who'd been just about to launch her interior design business for the past decade, who lived in a condo our parents mostly paid for, who dated a series of increasingly inappropriate men and then cried to me when they inevitably left. "What's with the face?" she demanded. "It's a joke, Ethan. God, you used to have a sense of humor." I picked up the sign, studying it while everyone watched, waiting for my reaction. The familiar tightness crept into my chest, the same feeling I'd had at countless family dinners, graduations, holidays, any occasion where the Reynolds family gathered to subtly reinforce who mattered and who didn't. But this time, something different happened. The tightness dissolved, replaced by an odd calm. "I'll be right back," I said. I walked to my car, opened the trunk, and reached for the shoebox I'd been carrying around for weeks, unsure whether I'd ever use its contents. It wasn't planned for today. It wasn't planned at all. But sometimes the universe hands you the perfect moment. When I returned, everyone was posing for test shots, laughing. Olivia was directing the photographer, a tired-looking woman who kept glancing at her watch. My nieces and nephews were chasing each other around the yard. No one had even noticed I'd left. I set the shoebox in the center of the patio table and slid it toward my parents. "What's this?" Dad asked, his smile fading as he noticed my expression. "Open it." Mom glanced at the others, then lifted the lid. Inside were letters. Old, yellowed at the edges. Dozens of them, addressed to me. "They're from Harvard. Princeton. Yale. Stanford," I said quietly. "All dated 12 years ago." Dad's face drained of color. Mom's hands trembled as she lifted the first envelope. "They're acceptance letters," I continued, speaking loudly enough that the chatter around us gradually hushed. "Full scholarships to every university you told everyone rejected me." The silence was absolute now. Even the photographer had stopped clicking. "I found them in the attic last month when I was helping you move the Christmas decorations. Hidden in an old filing cabinet." I looked directly at my father. "You kept them from me. Told me I didn't get in anywhere but state. And when I found them, 12 years too late, you know what I realized? This wasn't even surprising. It was just one more piece of a pattern I've been ignoring my entire life." Mom started to speak, but I held up a hand. "The funny thing is, I had almost talked myself out of confronting you. Almost convinced myself there must be some explanation, some mistake." I gestured toward the family disappointment sign. "Thanks for the clarity." Dad stood up straighter, his jaw tightening in that way it did when he was preparing to shut down a conversation. "Son, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly," I cut him off. "You've been sabotaging me my entire life, and I've been letting you." Olivia stepped forward, her face flushed with anger or embarrassment or both. "You can't just drop this bomb and walk away. This is my photo shoot." I laughed, actually laughed. "That's what you're worried about? Your photos? Not the fact that our parents sabotaged my education? My future?" "It wasn't like that," Dad finally spoke, his voice hollow. "We couldn't afford those schools, even with scholarships. We were protecting you from debt. Funny how you managed to find money for Josh's law school. And Olivia's 3-year finding herself tour of Europe." I shook my head. "I built everything I have without your help. Actually, I built it despite your active discouragement." My phone buzzed, my assistant confirming tomorrow's board meeting. The board meeting where I'd be announcing the acquisition that would likely double our company's valuation. The company I'd built from nothing while my family was busy discussing my shortcomings. "I have to go. I'm closing an 8-figure deal tomorrow." Disappointing, I know. I walked to my car, ignoring the calls behind me. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for their approval or bracing for their judgment. I was just free. The text started before it made it back to the highway. "Olivia, how dare you ruin my event? Mom is crying and Dad is furious. You always do this, make everything about yourself. Josh, Dad says those letters were from community colleges, not Ivy Leagues. Way to go, drama queen. Call Mom and apologize. Mom, please come back, sweetie. There's been a misunderstanding. We need to talk about this as a family. Dad, this behavior is exactly why we worried about sending you away to school. Call me when you've calmed down." I tossed my phone onto the passenger seat and turned up the radio, letting the classical music wash over me as I drove. I should have felt angry, hurt, betrayed. Instead, I felt oddly peaceful, as if I'd finally set down a weight I'd been carrying so long I'd forgotten it was there. When I reached my apartment, a penthouse overlooking the city that my family had never visited despite multiple invitations, I poured myself a whiskey and sat at my desk, staring at the acceptance letters I'd kept copies of. The originals were now scattered across my parents' backyard table, physical proof of a betrayal so profound it had shaped the course of my life. I'd been 17 when I applied to those universities, staying up nights working on essays, studying for the SATs with a determination that surprised even me. I'd wanted to prove something, to myself, to my family, to anyone who'd written me off as the family disappointment before I'd even had a chance to become something else. When the rejections came, or rather, when my parents told me I'd been rejected, I'd been devastated but not surprised. It fit the narrative. Ethan aims too high. Ethan doesn't quite measure up. Ethan should be more realistic. So I'd gone to state, worked full-time while carrying a double major, graduated summa cum laude, and built a life far from my family's expectations or understanding. I'd dated women they never met, traveled to countries they couldn't locate on a map, and eventually founded an investment firm that now managed over $1 billion in assets. And I'd done it all while dutifully showing up for Sunday dinners, holiday gatherings, and yes, family photo shoots, accepting my designated role as the family disappointment because it seemed easier than fighting it. Until today. My phone rang, my assistant, Jennifer. Sorry to bother you on a Sunday, Ethan, but the Wakefield people are getting cold feet. They're asking for another 10 million or they walk. I swirled the whiskey in my glass. Tell them we'll do 5 million and not a penny more. And Jennifer? Schedule a meeting with our foundation team for Wednesday. I have a new project I want to discuss. After hanging up, I opened my laptop and began drafting an email, the kind I'd composed in my head 100 times but never sent. This time was different. This time, I wasn't asking for approval or acknowledgement. I was simply stating facts. Dear family, I won't be attending Sunday dinners or family gatherings for the foreseeable future. I've accepted your assessment of me as a disappointment, and I'm no longer interested in playing that role. To clarify a few points, I am the founder and CEO of Reynolds Capital Group. We manage assets of approximately $1.3 billion. My personal net worth exceeds $35 million as of close of business Friday. I live in the penthouse of the Westerly Building downtown. These are not boasts, just facts that might have been nice to share with people who supposedly care about me, had they ever shown genuine interest in my life. The letters you hid from me changed the trajectory of my life, but perhaps not in the way you intended. I had to work harder, push further, and rely solely on myself. For that unintentional gift, I should perhaps thank you. I won't be taking calls or responding to messages for a while. I need space to reconsider what family means to me. Ethan. I stared at the screen for a long time before finally pressing send. Then I blocked their numbers, opened another bottle of whiskey, and for the first time in my adult life, allowed myself to feel the full weight of my family's betrayal. The fallout was both immediate and predictable. Unable to reach me directly, my family began reaching out through every possible channel. Colleagues received LinkedIn messages. Friends I hadn't spoken to in years called to say my parents were looking for me. The doorman at my building reported that a woman matching Olivia's description had tried to talk her way upstairs, claiming a family emergency. I ignored it all, focusing instead on finalizing the Wakefield acquisition and diving into work with an intensity that even my dedicated team found alarming. You need to sleep at some point, Jennifer pointed out on the fourth consecutive day I'd been in the office past midnight. I'll sleep when the deal is done, I replied, not looking up from my computer. The deal is done, Ethan. We signed yesterday, remember? The press release goes out tomorrow. I blinked, suddenly aware of the burning in my eyes, the stiffness in my shoulders. Right. Of course. Jennifer hesitated, then placed a printout on my desk. Also, your sister has called 17 times this week. Your mother twice that. I've been running interference as requested, but... She tapped the paper. This showed up in my email this morning. Thought you should see it. It was a Facebook post from Olivia, screenshotted and printed in color. Family is complicated, but blood is thicker than water. Please keep our family in your thoughts as we navigate a difficult time with my youngest brother, who is struggling with some personal issues. We love you, E, and we're here when you're ready to talk. Hashtag mental health awareness, hashtag family first. Attached was a photo from years ago, my graduation from state. I was smiling stiffly between my parents, while Josh and Olivia flanked them, all of us pretending to be the perfect family for the camera. The post had 143 likes and dozens of sympathetic comments. So sorry you're going through this, Liv. Here if you need anything. Praying for your brother. Mental health struggles are so hard on the whole family. Sometimes the most successful people are fighting the biggest battles. Sending healing thoughts. I stared at the post, feeling a cold rage unlike anything I'd experienced before. They were rewriting the narrative again, casting me as the unstable one, the one with issues, the one who needed help. And people were believing it, just as they always had. I need you to set up a meeting with the PR team, I told Jennifer. Tomorrow morning, first thing. Already done, she replied, and I remembered why I'd hired her. She was always 3 steps ahead. Also, that foundation meeting you requested is set for Wednesday. The team wants to know what area you're interested in funding this time. I tapped the Facebook post. Education. Specifically, scholarships for students whose families are unsupportive of their academic aspirations. Jennifer raised an eyebrow but nodded without comment. I'll let them know. Now please, go home and get some sleep. You look terrible. I must have looked worse than I thought, because she actually escorted me to my car, watching with folded arms as I got in. Straight home, Ethan. I mean it. The world won't end if you take a night off. But as I drove, I found myself turning not toward my apartment but toward the suburbs, toward the neighborhood where I'd grown up. I told myself I was just driving, clearing my head. I didn't plan to stop. Yet somehow, at just past 1 a.m., I found myself parked outside my parents' house, staring at the dark windows, wondering what secrets lay behind them besides the ones I already knew. A light clicked on in the kitchen. Through the sheer curtains, I could see my father in his bathrobe, getting a glass of water. He looked older than he had at the photo shoot, his shoulders slumped, his movement slow. For a moment, I felt a pang of something like sympathy. Then I remembered the letters. The lies. The years of subtle undermining and not so subtle dismissal. I started the car and drove away, not entirely sure what I'd been looking for or whether I'd found it. The Reynolds First Generation Scholarship Foundation was announced 2 weeks later, with an initial endowment of $20 million. Full rides for students whose families couldn't, or wouldn't, support their education. Special consideration for applicants who demonstrated exceptional potential despite challenging family circumstances. I gave exactly one interview, to the business section of the local paper. The reporter was sharp, catching the subtext immediately. "This is personal for you, isn't it, Mr. Reynolds?" I sipped my water, considering how much to reveal. "Let's just say I understand what it means to have your potential dismissed by the people who should be your biggest supporters. Your family must be very proud of what you've accomplished." I smiled thinly. "You'd have to ask them." The article ran with the headline, "Local Billionaire Establishes Scholarship Fund for Unsupported Students." The subheading, "Ethan Reynolds Builds Legacy His Family Never Imagined." It wasn't strictly accurate. I wasn't quite a billionaire, at least not yet, but I didn't request a correction. Let them read it over their morning coffee and choke on the truth. The family grapevine exploded. Relatives I hadn't heard from in years suddenly had questions, comments, concerns. My aunt in Phoenix called the office 3 times. A cousin I barely remembered sent a Facebook friend request. My phone filled with messages from numbers I'd blocked, routed to a special folder I had no intention of opening. Until one arrived from my youngest niece, Emma, Olivia's daughter, Uncle Ethan. I got into Columbia. Mom says we can't afford it. Can we talk? Emma was 17, brilliant, quiet. She'd always reminded me of myself at that age, watchful, careful, trying to carve out an identity in a family that had already decided who she was supposed to be. While her older sister Harper was the golden child, following directly in Olivia's footsteps, Emma was the family disappointment in training. Some ties, it seems, are worth keeping. Some people deserve a chance to break the pattern. I texted back, "We'll talk tomorrow. Bring your acceptance letter." "And Emma? Congratulations. I'm proud of you." "They told everyone you had a nervous breakdown," Emma said matter-of-factly, stirring her latte. "We were sitting in a cafe across town, far from anywhere my family might go. Mom says it's the pressure of success. Grandpa says you always were high-strung. Uncle Josh isn't saying much, but he looks worried." I couldn't help but laugh. "Worried about what?" "That you'll tell people about his gambling, probably." She shrugged at my surprised expression. "I'm 17, not blind. He keeps borrowing money from Mom, and she keeps asking Grandpa to cover it." I studied my niece with new appreciation. She'd always been observant, but I hadn't realized just how much she'd pieced together about our dysfunctional family. "So," I said, "Columbia." She straightened, a flash of pride crossing her face before the familiar Reynolds caution tamped it down. "It's probably not going to happen. Mom says." "I don't care what your mom says," I interrupted gently. "Show me the letter." She pulled an envelope from her backpack, sliding it across the table with the same gesture I'd used with the shoebox. Inside was the typical congratulatory letter, along with details about financial aid, which, as Olivia had apparently noted, wouldn't cover nearly enough. "Why Columbia?" I asked. "Their neuroscience program. I want to research degenerative brain diseases." Her voice grew stronger as she spoke about her plans, her eyes lighting up. "There's a professor there doing incredible work on early detection of Alzheimer's biomarkers." I emailed her about my senior project, and she actually wrote back, suggested some approaches I hadn't considered. She caught herself, seeming to remember who she was talking to. "Anyway, it doesn't matter. I can go to state." "It's fine." "It's not fine," I said. "And you're not going to state unless that's genuinely your first choice." She looked at me warily. "What does that mean?" "It means I'm going to pay for Columbia. Full ride, no strings attached. Housing, books, expenses, everything." She stared, her expression cycling through disbelief, hope, and suspicion. "Why would you do that?" "Because 12 years ago, someone should have done it for me." I held her gaze. "I found out recently that I was accepted to several Ivy League schools with scholarships. Your grandparents hid the letters. Told me I was rejected." That's horrible," she whispered. "Yes, it was. And I'm not going to let it happen to you." "But Mom will never." "Your mother doesn't get a vote," I said firmly. "You're nearly 18. Once you're accepted and the tuition is paid, what exactly can she do?" A slow smile spread across Emma's face, not the practiced, perfect Reynolds smile that Olivia had perfected, but something realer, wilder. "She'll be furious." "Probably," I agreed. "Does that bother you?" She considered this, then shook her head. "No. I'm tired of making myself smaller so she won't feel threatened." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Thank you, Uncle Ethan." "You're welcome. And Emma? When you get to Columbia, don't look back. Build your own life. The best revenge is living well, trust me on that." She nodded, and in that moment, I saw myself in her so clearly it almost hurt. But Emma had something I hadn't had at her age, someone in her corner. Someone who knew exactly what she was up against. The family disappointment sign arrived at my office 3 days later, mailed in a plain brown box with no note. I knew immediately who had sent it, Olivia's passive-aggressive signature move. I should have thrown it away. Instead, I had it framed. It sits in my office now, behind my desk where clients can't see it but I always can. Not as a reminder of pain, but as a marker of the day I finally stopped trying to fit into a story they'd written for me. The day I realized that sometimes, disappointing the wrong people is exactly the right thing to do. My assistant still forwards me the occasional family update, Olivia ranting on social media about toxic family members, Josh filing for bankruptcy, my parents selling their house and downsizing to a condo. I read them, acknowledge them, and then get back to work. I haven't spoken to any of them in over a year. I don't miss the Sunday dinners or the holiday gatherings or the barbed comments disguised as concern. What I do miss, sometimes, is the possibility of what we could have been, a real family, one that celebrated each other's successes instead of being threatened by them. One that told the truth. But that family never existed except in my imagination. And the truth, once seen, can't be unseen. Last week, Emma called from her dorm room at Columbia, bubbling over with excitement about a research opportunity in her professor's lab. I can't believe they picked me, she kept saying. Me, a freshman. I can believe it, I told her. You're brilliant, Emma. Always have been. There was a pause, and when she spoke again, her voice was quieter. Mom called yesterday. Said I should come home for Thanksgiving, that everyone misses me. What did you tell her? I said I'd think about it. Another pause. What would you do? I considered this carefully. I can't tell you what to do. But I can tell you that you don't owe anyone your presence, especially people who've made you feel like you're not enough. Yeah, she said slowly. That's what I thought too. Then, more brightly, I'm thinking of staying here for Thanksgiving. My roommate's family invited me to join them in the city. They want to show me real New York pizza and take me to the Macy's parade. Sounds perfect, I said, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with disappointment and everything to do with watching someone break free. Take pictures. After we hung up, I sat for a long time looking at the framed family disappointment sign. Then I took it down, carried it to the storage closet, and placed it on a high shelf. I didn't need the reminder anymore. I already knew who I was, and more importantly, who I wasn't. 6 months after Emma started at Columbia, I received an unexpected visitor at my office. Jennifer buzzed me, her voice tight with surprise. Your father is here. He doesn't have an appointment. I considered telling her to send him away. Instead, I said, give me 5 minutes, then send him in. I used those 5 minutes to center myself, to remember that I was no longer the version of Ethan Reynolds who craved his father's approval. I was the CEO of a billion-dollar investment firm, sitting behind a mahogany desk in a corner office 42 floors above the city where I'd grown up feeling small. When my father walked in, the first thing I noticed was how diminished he seemed. His expensive suit hung loose on his frame, and the confident stride I'd spent a lifetime trying to emulate had slowed to a careful shuffle. Age or illness, I couldn't tell which. Ethan, he said, his voice rougher than I remembered. Thank you for seeing me. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. What can I do for you, Dad? He sat, looking around the office with undisguised surprise. This is impressive. Did you think I was lying about my success? He winced. No, I didn't think that. He placed a manila envelope on the desk between us. I came to give you these. I didn't reach for it. What is it? The other letters. The ones you didn't find. My heart thudded painfully against my ribs. What other letters? From MIT. Caltech. Oxford. He pushed the envelope toward me. There were more than what you found. I kept them. Separate. I stared at the envelope, feeling 17 again, full of possibilities I hadn't yet been told were impossible. Why are you giving these to me now? Because I owe you the truth. He looked down at his hands, folded in his lap. We did hide those letters from you. Not because we couldn't afford to send you, though we couldn't, not really, but because we were afraid. Afraid of what? Afraid you'd leave and never come back. He met my eyes then, and I was startled to see tears. You were always different, Ethan. Always seeing things the rest of us missed. Josh and Olivia, they were like us, ordinary, content with ordinary things. But you would look at the stars and wonder how they worked. You'd question everything. We knew if you went to those schools, you'd become someone we couldn't reach anymore. So you decided to hold me back? To make me smaller? My voice rose despite my determination to stay calm. Do you have any idea what you stole from me? We thought we were protecting the family. Keeping it whole. He shook his head. We were wrong. So wrong. And now look, you became that person anyway, and we lost you just the same. I opened the envelope. Inside were more acceptance letters, just as he'd said. More evidence of a path not taken, a life unlived. Why tell me this now? I asked. It's been over a year since the photo shoot. Why come here today? I had a heart attack 3 weeks ago, he said simply. Nothing concentrates the mind quite like facing your own mortality. I've been thinking about my legacy, what I'm leaving behind. And I realized I couldn't die with this still between us. I should have felt vindicated, or at least satisfied. Instead, I felt hollow. Is this an apology? It's the closest I know how to come to one. He stood, slowly, painfully. I don't expect your forgiveness, Ethan. I just wanted you to know that I recognize what we did. What I did. He turned to leave, this man who had once seemed larger than life to me, who now appeared so fragile. Dad, I called after him. He paused at the door. How's Mom? Managing. Missing you. He hesitated. Missing Emma too. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. You're doing a good thing for her, he said. Better than we did for you. After he left, I sat for a long time with those additional acceptance letters spread across my desk, tangible proof of all I might have been. But oddly, they didn't hurt as much as I'd expected. Perhaps because I'd built something significant anyway, or perhaps because time had softened the edges of that old pain. That evening, I called Emma. How's Columbia? Amazing, she said immediately. I got an A on my neurochemistry midterm, and Professor Weissman asked if I want to assist with her summer research project. That's fantastic, I said, meaning it. Listen, I had a visit from your grandfather today. Really? The wariness in her voice was achingly familiar. What did he want? To apologize, in his way. He mentioned he misses you. She was quiet for a moment. They all say that now. But they still don't really see me, you know? They just miss having someone to control. I know, I said. But people can change, Emma. Sometimes it takes something drastic to make them see what they've done. Like a heart attack? She asked shrewdly. Mom mentioned it, like I was supposed to come running home. You don't owe them anything, I reminded her. But forgiveness, if you ever choose to give it, wouldn't be for them anyway. It would be for you. Is that what you're going to do? Forgive them? I considered this. I don't know. But I'm thinking about it, which is more than I would have said a year ago. After we hung up, I poured myself a whiskey and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows of my penthouse, looking down at the city lights below. Somewhere out there was the house I grew up in, the family that had both formed and deformed me, and the complicated legacy I was still untangling. I thought about my father's visit, about Emma's future, about the foundation that would help others like us escape the narrow confines of other people's expectations. I thought about forgiveness, not as a gift to those who'd hurt me, but as a release for myself. I wasn't there yet. Maybe I never would be. But for the first time, I could imagine a future where the past didn't define me, where family disappointment was just a phrase from another life, framed and shelved away like an artifact from a museum of who I used to be. Some might call it revenge, what I did. Exposing their lies, cutting them off, funding Emma's education as a final middle finger to Olivia. But it doesn't feel like revenge from where I'm sitting. It feels like justice, not just for me, but for the 17-year-old boy who deserved better. For Emma, who deserves better now. For everyone who's ever been handed a sign telling them who they're supposed to be, and found the courage to write their own story instead.